Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA predictions for UFC 140 Jones vs. Machida. As your host, Scott Johnson, and this event will be taking place live on December 10th, 2011 from the Air Canada Centre in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. It'll feature 5 main card fights, including our light heavyweight title fight, along with 7 preliminary fights, of which I will be predicting 6 of them. As always, Sports Interaction is the official betting site of Kamikaze Overdrive. Please check them out for all of your betting options. MMABettingOdds.com, a great site for online betting sources, so please check them out as well. They'll give you all kinds of information. You can preview I like to write for each event and post on that website. And MMACrypts.com, another site I'm posting my videos on. I've been posting my videos there for a bit, and they're going to be hosting my site on their main page, or my video on their main page. So please check them out. A fantastic site as always. And finally, the Grand Prix prediction tournament the second round has come to a conclusion. We started with 32 competitors. We are now down to 8 competitors who advanced to the second round. You'll be able to check out the final scores of the second round following the Ultimate Fighter 14 event. Check out the 8 people that advanced. You'll be able to see the new matchups. UFC 140 is the first of 3 events for the third round, so please get your picks in, as always, if you're competing in the tournament. And Kamikaze Overdrive survived a scare, but we did advance. I did advance to the third round of the tournament, and I'm still competing. And yeah, I just want to talk about the Ultimate Fighter for a quick second. I went 10-2, including the 2 semifinals. I'm a perfect 10-0 predicting Ultimate Fighter tournament fights. Over the last 3 years, I think that's a fairly good record. Either way, 10-2 definitely jumped out of a little slump I'd have where I was just barely getting over 500 with my predictions. Let's see if we can keep it rolling with UFC 140. And on that note, let's get to the first set of predictions. Alright, let's get into my preliminary predictions. Up first, we have Rich Antonito versus Jake Hesh. Both guys have proven they can win fights a variety of ways, but Hesh is a newcomer and he's also moving up a weight class, and I think this will show up. Antonito will be making his 5th appearance in the Octagon, and Hesh will have to deal with Octagon jitters and everything else that comes with his debut. I'm going to take Antonito by decision. Next, Mark Bocek versus Nick Lentz. Now this fight's going to be spent almost entirely on the ground, as Bocek is a BJJ black belt and Lentz a wrestler. Now Lentz has gone undefeated in the UFC, averaging almost 4 takedowns per fight. Bocek has looked good on the ground as well, but not perfect, losing to Ben Henderson, Jim Miller, and Mac Danzig, all fights that spent a great deal of time on the mat. If Lentz can sit of Bocek's submissions, he wins this one. I'll take Nick Lentz by decision. Up next, Yves Jabouin versus YL Watson. Watson will have a 7-inch reach advantage as well as being 5 inches taller, and he showed good use of distance in his UFC debut. Jabouin is a solid striker, but I'm not sold on his gas tank, and I expect him to do a lot of swinging and missing, with its toll on his endurance. Watson uses a lot of leg kicks that will keep Yves on the outside, and if Watson wants to take it to the ground, 7 of his 9 wins have come via submission. While Jabouin has been tapped out 3 times, I'll take Watson by submission. Up next, John Makdessi versus Dennis Hallman. Now, Hallman is returning to the lightweight division against an undefeated opponent in Makdessi. Hallman is predominantly a grappler, and if this drop in weight class gives him a size and strength advantage, that will be huge. Makdessi, on the other hand, has proven himself to be a very dangerous striker with 7 knockouts in 9 fights. He has 2 UFC wins, both over ground fighters, defending 4 or 5 takedown attempts, and if he can do the same here, he will have the advantage on the feet. John Makdessi by knockout. Jared Hammond up next against Konstantinos Philippou. Hammond has proven himself to be incredibly tough, and in his middleweight debut, he endured the early onslaught of CB Dollaway and turned it on when CB began to fade. Hammond's fighting style prevents him from gassing out, and his ability to take damage wears his opponents out. Philippou defeated veteran Jorge Rivera, but created questions about his conditioning. As Konstantinos begins to fade, Hammond will take control. I'll take Jared Hammond to win by TKO. Finally, Igor Prokhrayets versus Krzysztof Sosinski. Now, Sosinski is a very scrappy fighter that always shows up to fight. Prokhrayets has had success against lower-level competition, but when he steps up against guys like Stefan Bonner, James Tahuna, and Vladimir Matyushenko, he was badly outclassed. Krzysztof will have a reach advantage and should be able to use his strength to control the fight along the cage. He dominated his last 2 opponents, and I think he'll just outwork Prokhrayets here. I'll take Sosinski to win this matchup by decision. Those are my preliminary picks, 4 of which you'll be able to see on Ion Television or in Canada Sportsnet. Let's get to the main card. We start the pay-per-view off in the featherweight division, and as a new feature on my show, this fight is the certified overdrive fight of the night, as Mark the Machine Hominick, 29, will take on the Korean Zombie, Chansung Jung, 11-3. Now, Hominick had a 4-fight winning streak snapped in his last bout against Jose Aldo, while Jung earned an impressive submission win over Leonard Garcia in his last appearance. Now, Jung asked for this bout with Hominick, and stylistically, they match up quite nicely. Both are known for their striking. And this fight is going to be very exciting. Before talking about their striking now, let's look at their mat skills. Jung's twister submission against Leonard Garcia was impressive. He has 7 submission wins and has never been tapped out. Conversely, Hominick has been submitted 5 times, and generally it's believed that he is most vulnerable on the mat. Jose Aldo exploited this, completing multiple takedowns, but had more success with his ground and pound than submissions. In fact, Mark has only been submitted twice over his last 14 bouts, while earning 3 submission wins during that span. Neither fighter attempts or completes a high number of takedowns, and the Canadian has impressive takedown defense at 71%. Jung should have the advantage on the ground, but I expect the majority of this fight will be contested standing. Hominick has the superior numbers, holding a 9-2 edge in knockout victories. He took a lot of damage against Aldo, nearly getting stopped, but overall he has only suffered 2 knockouts, and they were early in his career. Jung has been stopped once, but much more recently, as George Roop KO'd him with a vicious head kick at WEC 51. Following that bout, Jung vowed to use a less reckless style and was in his second Leonard Garcia fight. He implemented a nice left jab, but despite his attempts at using a more technical style, he had a significant drop-off in striking accuracy. He landed 30% of 100 attempts, compared to 40% in the first Garcia fight, where he attempted more than twice as many strikes. He has trouble landing punches from the outside, swinging wildly, but when he gets inside, he has far more success. Juxtaposed to Jung's looping strikes, Mark's Hominick strikes are predominantly crisp, straight punches. He has smooth combinations, changes levels nicely, and has significant power. Now, he showcased this power when he knocked out George Roop and dropped Yves Jabouin with a devastating left hook to the liver. Against Leonard Garcia, Hominick avoided Garcia's attacks using head movement to move in and out, battering his adversary with precision striking. Hominick brings constant pressure, remaining in the pocket and forcing his opponent to attack while moving backwards. The Korean Zombie has had success counter-striking, but Hominick's ability to avoid punches will make countering very difficult. Jose Aldo had success against Hominick, but I attribute this success to a speed advantage, which I don't think will be an issue here, as Hominick should be the faster of the 2 fighters. Further, the Korean fighter has a tendency to stand flat-footed. George Roop had a lot of success using movement, and I expect Mark Hominick will as well. Hominick will be able to outstrike Jung, avoiding the big looping punches of his opponent while landing his own strikes. As long as Mark can keep the fight standing, he will be in control of this matchup. So my prediction is Mark Hominick to defeat Chan Sung Jung by knockout. In the welterweight division, Claude the Prince Patrick, 14-1, will take on Brian Bad Boy Ebersole, 48-14-1. Ebersole has won 9 in a row in his first 2 UFC bouts, while Patrick has gone 3-0 since joining the company and is riding a 13-fight winning streak. Brian Ebersole is a veteran fighter that has made the most of his opportunity in the UFC, defeating the likes of Chris Lytle and Dennis Hallman. Stylistically, this is an interesting matchup. Claude Patrick has shown dominating grappling skills, completing 8 of 12 takedowns attempts in 3 octagon performances. He has submitted Ricardo Funch in his debut and dominated Cesar Gracie purple belt Daniel Roberts. He has a solid shot, he works the double underhooks well, and when he's on top, he has an excellent base. Brian Ebersole is a former NCAA Division I wrestler. He has 20 career submission victories, but has also suffered 9 losses by the same method. Of his first 11 career defeats, 8 were by tap-out, but it would appear that he has made significant improvements in his submission defense. Over his past 22 fights, he's only suffered 1 submission defeat, and it was a submission to strikes. Further, he has survived 6 submission attempts in his first 2 UFC fights. For the most part, I expect this fight will be contested on the mat. Neither man has overly dominant striking skills. They are both capable on the feet, but we really haven't seen anything overly noteworthy. Patrick likes to keep things simple, using leg kicks and a basic 1-2. Ebersole held his own against Chris Lytle, catching him with a perfectly timed knee to the chin, but again, nothing spectacular stood out. His striking defense is good, he covers up well and moves away, limiting his opponent's ability to do damage. Now, the most noteworthy aspect of Brian Ebersole is his in-ring demeanor. From the harrow to the rolling cartwheel kick and everything in between, he is entertaining and unorthodox. But there's a little more to this than might at first appear. His style does 2 things. It keeps him quite loose, preventing him from gassing out, and secondly, it can affect his opponent as they are unsure how to deal with him, so much so that they don't really regard him as a serious threat. Case in point, Chris Lytle won the first round against Ebersole, but during that span he attempted 3 submissions and threw a lot of power punches, expecting to defeat Ebersole with relative ease. Brian simply defended and waited for Chris to tire, and when he did, he took over the fight. On the other hand, Claude Patrick has been accused of being too conservative, but in this fight, I think this will actually benefit him significantly. On the ground, the Canadian will work to advance his position, but he always maintains a solid base, leaves limited opportunities for his opponents to reverse, taking very few chances. Adding to this, he has excellent endurance, which allows him to maintain control on the mat for the entire fight. Ebersole had the majority of success against Lyoto and Hominick after they attempted submissions and were unable to finish, which left them very vulnerable. Brian Ebersole has been impressive in his short UFC career, but unlike previous opponents, Claude Patrick should be aware of what Ebersole does in the cage, and as a result, he should be less flustered by his opponent's antics. This is a very big opportunity for the Canadian, and he will want to make the most of it in front of his hometown. My prediction is Claude Patrick to use his ground skills and defeat Brian Ebersole by decision. In the light heavyweight division, the newly named People's Champion Tito Ortiz, 17-9-1, will take on Antonio Rogerio Nogueira, 19-5-0. Little Nog has lost 2 in a row, while Tito suffered a TKO victory in his last appearance. Tito's a former divisional champion. He generated some momentum for himself with a huge upset victory over Ryan Bader, but again suffered a TKO defeat against Rashad Evans last time out. Little Nog scored an impressive knockout in his debut, but followed it up by running into a series of wrestlers that saw him win a controversial fight with Jason Brills and then drop back-to-back decisions against Ryan Bader and Phil Davis. When this matchup was initially announced, my first reaction was that this was a winnable fight for Ortiz based on the success that these aforementioned wrestlers have had against Nogueira. The striking component of this bout is clearly in favor of the Brazilian. Nog is a former boxing champion, and he has 5 career knockouts, including a win over Alistair Overeem. His combinations are fluid, and his overall offense is simple but effective. He doesn't throw a lot of kicks. He will incorporate knee strikes into his attack. Now, Tito Ortiz has been working on his striking. He caught Bader with a short punch and dropped him, but for the most part, he is usually the second best striker in the cage. Against Lyoto, Machida, and Rashad Evans, he fared badly, and even against lesser strikers like Forrest Griffin and Matt Hamill, he struggled to find success in the exchanges. If this fight stays standing, then Ortiz will be at a significant disadvantage. The grappling aspect of this match will be a deciding factor. Ortiz's run as champion was based upon his takedowns and lethal ground and pound, resulting in multiple TKO victories. Conversely, Little Nog's ground game has produced 6 submission wins while never having been tapped out. Little Nog's perceived difficulty with wrestlers might not be as big an issue as most believe. All of Black House have been training their wrestling with Mark Munoz, and despite facing 3 talented wrestlers, Nogueira has shown slightly above average takedown defense in those bouts. Over his career, Nog has defended 65% of his takedowns, but against Brills, Bader, and Davis, he stopped 28 of 40 attempts, which is 70%. Each fighter had to make numerous attempts in order to get Nog down only a couple of times. Davis had to work very hard using his speed and striking to set up his takedowns, and even then he had trouble, and when he was unable to complete the double leg takedown, he was forced to switch to a single. Tito has built his career on the power double, and if Nog is able to take away his primary weapon, it will really hamper Ortiz's ability to win this fight. Adding to this, Nogueira has an excellent defensive guard, able to control his opponent and either sweep or push them off. Even if Tito is able to get knocked down, he will struggle to keep him there, let alone get much offense off, and as the fight progresses, Tito will slow down, making this even harder. Finally, Nog has used a knee strike to the body, stopping Vladimir Matyushenko and landing several times on Brills when he shot in. Machida hurt Tito badly with a knee to the body, and Evans all but finished him in a similar fashion. So Nogueira could find success here. Tito's best takedowns are behind him, and Nogueira will do enough to keep the fight standing, so my prediction is Antonio Rogerio Nogueira to defeat Tito Ortiz by decision. In the co-main event of the night, heavyweights Frank Mir, 15-5, and 33-6-1 Minotauro Nogueira will meet in a rematch from their UFC 92 battle. Mir has won 2 in a row in 3 of his last 4, while Big Nog is looking to build upon a triumphant return at UFC Rio. In their first meeting, Frank Mir became the first man to stop Nog with a second-round knockout, but it was revealed days later that Nog's health was not at 100%, which impacted his performance. Since that fight, Nog has gone 2-1 over 3 years, suffering a second knockout against Cain Velasquez, sandwiched between wins over Randy Couture and Brendan Schaub. Mir has been a little more active with 5 fights, going 3-2, suffering knockouts against Brock Lesnar and Shane Carwin. Mir's performance in the first meeting was really a coming-out party, as he put on a show of the significantly improved striking and endurance. He continually battered his opponent with a fluid combinations of 3 and 4 punches, often finishing with both high and body kicks. Mir was composed and maintained excellent distance, closing to attack and separating to avoid damage. After the fight, Nog stated that he was impressed with Mir's striking, especially the distance he was able to maintain. Again, many wonder how badly Nog was hampered by injuries during this fight, but having gone back to UFC 81, you can see the groundwork for the success that Mir had. Tim Sylvia was able to drop Big Nog, landing several punches. Sylvia is not nearly as fast as Mir, but he used his reach to maintain distance, for the most part restricted to striking to jabs and straight strikes. The difference was where Mir would back away and allow the Brazilian to get up, Sylvia didn't. The Brazilian is a BJJ black belt with far superior ground skills compared to Sylvia. Nog has excellent wrist control and the ability to neutralize his opponent's top game. Frank Mir is also a black belt and is more than capable of holding his own on the mat against Minotauro, posturing up, not allowing his adversary to control his wrists or body. On the mat, Nog might have a slight edge in the grappling, but he doesn't possess an effective shot, and Mir's size and takedown defense will make it hard for Big Nog to get him to the ground. Nogueira was able to knock out Brendan Schaub in his last bout, but he got tagged several times and looked a little on the slow side. Schaub was having success attacking from the outside, but when he got in tight, Nogueira was able to find a home for his punches. Eventually, Schaub was backed against the cage and unable to create the needed distance to avoid Minotauro's strikes, and as a result suffered the knockout. Nog did show improved head movement, avoiding some of Brendan's big bombs, but Frank Mir's straight, crisp combinations are much harder to avoid than Schaub's single, looping punches. Frank will have more confidence than normal as a result of the first win he had. Mir is an intelligent fighter who studies fight tape constantly, and I don't expect him to deviate from his UFC 92 game plan. The first fight was roughly 3 years ago, and Nog has been regressing, while Mir seems to have refined his fight game. Many people would like to believe that the Pride legend is back to form after UFC Rio. I have my doubts, so my prediction is Frank Mir to once again defeat Minotauro Nogueira by knockout. In the main event of the night, UFC light heavyweight champion Jon Bones Jones, 14-1, defends his title against former champion Lyoto the Dragon Machida, 17-2. Jones is attempting to make his second title defense, while Machida earned a knockout victory over Randy Couture in his last appearance. Now, it wasn't that long ago that Machida was getting the type of hype that is now being heaped on the champion. There are a lot of similarities between these two men's rise to the top of the division. Potentially the most important aspect of their respective success is their ability to avoid damage. Both men are incredibly skilled at maintaining distance, but by different methods. Over his last 6 bouts, Jones' opponents have landed a combined total of 40 significant strikes, with Rampage landing the most at 16. Jones has the longest reach in the UFC at 84.5 inches, and we have yet to see an opponent consistently get inside his range. Conversely, Lyoto Machida uses his speed and technique to maintain distance, quickly closing to attack and then retreating. Statistically, both men absorb less than 1.5 strikes per minute, Jones avoiding 67% of his opponent's attacks and Machida 61%. Where Jones has remained relatively unscathed, Shogun Rua found success against Machida, landing 92 of 160 strikes and eventually knocking him out in their second meeting. Machida's ability to close distance presents the biggest challenge to Jones' run of dominance. Jones will have a 10.5-inch reach advantage, but where Rampage seemed uncomfortable with the distance, Machida has made a career of fighting in this manner. Lyoto will be the more technical striker, but the unorthodox style of Jones could also create problems. Machida has excellent straight punches, as he showed against Rashad Evans, closing the distance while blitzing Evans, who was simply unable to back up quick enough. Machida also possesses an effective knee to the body, and his karate background allows him to throw kicks with limited windup, making it quite difficult for his opponent to react, as we saw against Randy Couture. Machida has used takedowns in the past, mainly from the clinch, but this won't be in his best interest. When Rampage fought Machida, he successfully cut off the cage, which made it difficult for Lyoto to maintain distance, and when he got in close, he was able to clinch with Lyoto. Jones' size, strength, and Greco-Roman wrestling background makes him incredibly difficult to deal with in close. He can generate a lot of leverage, and with a wide variety of takedown styles, like the single leg he used against Rampage and the more flashy lateral drop, it is hard for his opponent to stay vertical when Jones commits to a takedown attempt. Statistically, he completes an impressive 65% of his takedown attempts, and even though Machida has solid takedown defensive stats, we have seen him put on his back before. People questioned how Jones would react when Rampage landed a power shot on his chin. Unfortunately, we still don't have that answer. Jones has made a few mistakes in his last bout, leaving openings that a talented striker like Machida would be able to capitalize on. He is still developing his striking game, and he continually shows improvement, especially with his growing variety of kicks and an improving set of hands. That being said, I don't expect Bones to fight Lyoto the same way that he fought Rampage, as he will want to limit the amount of striking exchanges. Look for the champion to use a predominantly wrestling-based approach, cutting off the cage, clinching, and eventually taking him to the mat. Machida is a BJJ black belt, but so is Shogun, and Jones handled him quite well. The champion has excellent top control, lethal ground and pound, and an improving submission game. I really don't expect Bones to look for the submission. Moreover, he will wear down Machida until he feels it is the opportune moment to unleash a barrage of elbows and punches from the top. Do not discount Machida's ability to win this fight, but I'm going to stick with the champion. I'll take Jon Jones to successfully defend his title by defeating Lyoto Machida by TKO. Welcome back to Kamikaze Countdown, and I want to touch upon a fighter in this episode. I'm going to talk about Michael Bisping, fresh off his Ultimate Fighter 14 finale victory over Jason Mayhem Miller. Now, a lot of people question about Michael Bisping as a fighter and his relevancy within the division. I look at a couple things. In his last 5 victories, he has 3 TKO wins. He has beaten some, he has not beaten a top 10 opponent in a lot of people's eyes, but you look at the opponents he's beaten: Jason Miller, Jorge Rivera, Yoshihiro Akiyama, Dan Miller, Dennis Kang, Chris Lieben. These guys are all legitimate fighters, and in most cases, he dominated them. His only recent losses were to Dan Henderson and Wanderlei Silva. Henderson, has knocked out a lot of people recently and dominated a lot of fighters. Wanderlei Silva won the fight. I think Bisping would win a rematch. You got to remember, this guy took Rashad Evans at light heavyweight to a split decision, so I think Bisping is a very capable fighter. He plays the villain very well. He's a humble guy when he needs to be, but at the same time he does some things in the cage, like when he hit Jorge Rivera with a knee to a downed opponent and threw that head kick over Jason Miller's head. Really makes you cringe. But in my opinion, I think Bisping is really moving up. I don't think he's quite deserving a title shot yet. Some people are calling for Michael Bisping, Brian Stann fight. As far as I'm concerned, when Brian Stann lost to Chael Sonnen, he dropped down. He's not, in a position to fight Michael Bisping. I like to see Bisping fight a couple different opponents. He could, if he could take on Damian Maia and beats Maia, then I'd give him a title shot because, Maia's fought for a title. I think he's a legitimate top 10 fighter in the division, just outside of the top 10. Or if Vitor Belfort gets by Anthony Rumble Johnson, I think Belfort Bisping in a title eliminator fight would be an excellent fight. Or another option, if Yushin Okami defeats Tim Boetsch, I think Bisping Okami would be a very solid fight. And again, that would see if Bisping is ready for a shot at Anderson Silva. I still think the winner of Munoz Sonnen gets the next Silva title shot. But either way, I know Michael Bisping is a controversial and polarizing character. But as far as I'm concerned, he certainly deserves some respect. He has mine, and I hope I wish him the best going forward. And I hope he just can eliminate a few of those things that bring about the boos from the crowds when he's outside of his native country. Either way, Kamikaze Countdown. Thanks for watching. So those are my predictions for UFC 140. As always, please feel free to comment on anything you saw here. Try and make an intelligent comments, because if you make a stupid comment, I'm going to fire back at you, and you better be ready for it. I do my best to defend myself. Coming off a pretty good night at 10-2 at the Ultimate Fighter 14. SportsInteraction.com. Please check them out for betting. MMABettingOdds.com. If you want as much help, it's a great online tool for making your betting and giving you the best options to win. MMA Crips, thank you for hosting my video, and please check them out. Another fantastic site. I'm going to add again the Dan Miller situation, going through an unfortunate situation with his young son. Please check out the description below for that story, and if you can, there's a link there that you can follow to help donate and help them out in their time of need. I want to quickly touch upon the Ultimate Fighter, or the Grand Prix tournament. We are down to 8 competitors left. There were 32. We are now fighting to see who can go to the Final Four. Kamikaze Overdrive survived a second-round matchup. I'm still trying to maintain my identity, not disclose it, for obvious reasons. Either way, I'd like to give a couple shout-out to a couple people. 905 Justin won. I'm glad I'm not facing him in the second round. That's all I'll say, because he is destroying YouTube online predictors. Took out Cascade Soldier in the first round, defeated Surfer Ken TV in the second round in a very close matchup. Props to Surfer Ken there, but Justin is running over online YouTube predictors, so look out for him. And also, Ninja Death Cult and Vola Run, another second round matchup. The 2 highest scores in the second round, unfortunately, because of the way we're doing the tournament, if you're the second best scorer in your matchup, your night's up. They were tied 60-60 going into the final fight, Michael Bisping versus Jason Mayhem Miller. And Vola Run had Bisping by TKO. Miller, Ninja Death Cult had Miller. Unfortunately, Vola Run got unfortunately for him, Miller got the win, or Bisping got the win. Vola Run advanced to the next round. Either way, get your picks in for this event. After all the picks are submitted, I'm going to send out an email with all of the picks so you can see who your opponent took, and then you can follow along and see how well you fared. I will do my best to get everything up as quickly as possible. As always, thank you for watching. Strike Force is the next one. Haven't had a Strike Force event in a long time, so check back for that. Check out all of my sponsors. That's enough from me. I will talk to you later. I'm out of here.